So, hi everyone. Welcome to our Open Doors workshop in partnership with Sigmar. My name is Lydia, and I am the program manager of Open Door Initiative. Today, our amazing speaker, Tom Dean, will present information about mastering your CV and presenting transferable skills. Also, I would like to introduce you our amazing ISL interpreter, Amanda. Amanda, thank you for supporting us today. Before we start, I would also like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded and we will share the recording with those who registered. If you would like to ask a question, you can use the chat box or a raise hand function, and the speaker can decide to answer your question as they come in or later after the presentation when we will have time for questions. Also, you have the opportunity to use live captions. For using this function, you need to use button 3 dots in the top of the screen. After that, to choose language and speech and choose turn on live captions. If everyone is clear, if everything is clear, I will hand it over to Tom Dean, Senior IT Recruiter and Manager Service Team Lead. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone is doing really well. And I'd like to first of all apologize to Amanda because I speak very, very fast, but I'm going to try and slow it down as much as possible. I'm going to share my screen so then hopefully everybody can see my slides. But if you have an issue, please let us know and we'll hopefully solve it before we kick off. So can everybody see this? And it's probably worthwhile knowing if you can see Amanda, if you need to see Amanda as well. So is that okay? I'm not sure if there's a like button or a comment. Yes, Vera, can you see? Or is that a yes?
Yes, everything is good. Tom, you can start.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, listen, everyone, thank you so much for joining. You're very, very welcome. My name is Tom Dean. So today I'm going to go through a little bit about myself. I'm going to go through what I find as a recruiter with a decade experience, what I find to be the best case scenario when you're putting together your CV, your LinkedIn profile, and also what to do before, during, and after your interview. The Irish market is unique in a sense that I suppose the standards and norms might be a little bit different to overseas, but again, this is not a one size fits all. This is malleable, so some of this mightn't resonate with you, some of it will, and some of it might seem quite basic. But if you're preparing yourself to enter into the Irish job market, then I think there's some really, really good hints, tips, and tricks here, and hopefully you can gain something from this. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you as we go through it. So if I click onto the first slide here, if this works. Okay, introduction and welcome. So as I said, my name is Tom Dean and I work for Sigmar Recruitment, and I have done for the last 9.5 years, almost 10 years now. I've worked for Sigmar Recruitment. In that time, I have worked across many different verticals. I initially started working as a financial accountancy recruitment consultant. I then transitioned into Sigmar's managed services division. What that is, essentially we would do RPOs with companies, which is recruitment process outsourcing. So I would go on site with some of our major clients and act as their internal recruiters. So I have a really good insight as to what companies are looking for in candidates when they're approached. I've done that for about 3 or 4 years, or for about 5 or 6 years. I was on site with some of the largest tech multinationals, some of the biggest financial institutions in the world, and some public sector companies as well. So I have a really good breadth of experience working on site and working collaboratively with companies. More recently, in the last 5 or 6 months, I've moved into tech recruitment, so IT and tech. Everybody's CV is different. Every industry has different requirements when it comes to CVs. So what I've tried to do is paint a general picture as to what recruiters and internal HR teams are looking for when they see your CV. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how good you are, your CV, your LinkedIn profile is your golden ticket to an interview. And that's when you can really shine. So you want to make sure that you can put your very best foot forward. So what I'm going to do, the agenda for today, I'm going to go through tips for generating effective CVs, transferable skills, what are they, how you can present them on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, and how to put them forward to a job application that you're making. I've got 15 tips for great LinkedIn profile, common interview formats, and what you do before, during, and after your interview. If at any stage people have questions, just let me know. I mightn't see them pop up, but hopefully I'll be able to get to all your questions at the end. And if I don't know the answer right now, I invite everybody here to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love expanding my network and I'd encourage you all to do the same thing. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have afterwards as well. So the first thing I'm going to go into, if my screen changes, lovely, tips for generating effective CVs. So first of all, what we're going to be covering in this little bit of the presentation is what is a CV and why is it so important? What are the rules for writing an effective CV? And when I say rules, it's essentially what people are looking for. What kind of rules would the general recruiter be looking for when they're looking at a CV? How to approach gaps or non-relevant roles? What areas do you avoid in your CV? And also a little bit on references and education. So first of all, what is a CV and why is it important? So first of all, and I can't emphasize this more, this is a controllable introduction of yourself. This is what people put forward to a company, and this is the first taste that a company is going to have of you. We know, having spent a number of years in COVID, how beneficial it is and how rich it is to meet somebody in person. And we always can't do that the first time that we're meeting somebody. So the CV needs to really reflect you and your personality and the experience that you have. So on your CV, what should you have? You should have contact details, email, phone, and location. When I say location, a general location. So it could be Dublin, Galway, Nice, whatever it might be, wherever you're based, but a general location. There should be a short summary or blurb. There should be an overview of your educational background, a snapshot of your relevant work experience, skills and language overview if relevant, interests and hobbies, and then reference details. And I'm going to go into all of these in a little bit more detail. And then what I'll do is I'll show an example of my CV, which is absolutely not a perfect CV, but as a recruiter who can sometimes go through 30, 40, 50 CVs a day, and sometimes it takes as little as 15 or 20 seconds to review a CV, it's what I like to see. The general format and information is what I'm looking for. First of all, what are the rules for writing an effective CV? Every single application that you make, you should have a new CV for. I know this can be quite tedious, especially in the market that we're in, and I can't emphasize enough, this is a tough market. Some people I've talked to over the last while, excellent candidates, have become a little bit downhearted and downtrodden because they've applied to so many different organizations and they've had automatic feedback. They've had email ping back saying you're just not what we're looking for with nothing past that. Tenacity and resilience is really big in this particular market. Your profile could be excellent, but there are 150 applications for every role that you're applying to. So you need to make sure that you're tailoring your CV so that you give yourself the very best chance to be that person that they call for this particular interview. I firmly believe that you cannot write a CV without a job specification. Of course, you can write your own CV, which explains your own experience, but until you see a specific job description of the role that you are applying to, I firmly believe you cannot write a tailored CV for that particular job description. You should be reviewing what that company is looking for and dive into your own personal experience bank and make sure you include that on your CV and alter your CV accordingly. Everything on the CV should contribute to your application. Remove or minimize everything else. You can say it in passing or in bullet point form, but there's no point talking about your 5 years in tech if you're moving into an accountancy position. Do not repeat points. If you have three different positions that you have the same experience in, don't copy and paste the first 3 or 4 job requirements because the reader will stop reading. You need to think of something different, something that you've done unique in each organization. Consider focusing on transferable skills where you do not have direct experience. Talk about successes and achievements. When I look at a CV, I love to see what somebody's done in an organization. If it's been successful, if it hasn't been successful, what are the achievements? And that doesn't mean I've hit 250% of my sales targets or I've expanded the business in this areas. If it's I've made meaningful interactions or I've really helped a customer in this particular way, put it down. Why not? Put a couple of really nice achievements. It really brings your personality across in your CV. Avoid using technical terms which are specific to a different industry. So again, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail shortly. What does tailoring your CV mean? So include what they are looking for on your CV. If they mention strong attention to detail as a key skill, do you have this mentioned as a direct skill or transferable? So if strong attention to detail in a finance job, for example, and you're moving from a customer service sector and you think, well, I don't have strong attention to detail in finance, so I won't include it. Make sure that you talk about that skill that you have in a different organization. It's critically important because the recruiter is also looking for where your skills can transfer into this particular job. A recruiter always wants you to get the job. They want to put you forward as the best version of yourself to the hiring manager. Never rely on something being implied. I've spoken to so many candidates where I've had a conversation and after 5 minutes I found out that they've got incredible experience that isn't mentioned on the CV. And it just hasn't been mentioned. And they said, well, I would have assumed that you knew that I was good at customer service because I work in a restaurant. And I'm like, I don't know that. I know you've worked in a restaurant, but I don't have experience of working in the culinary industry or the service industry. I don't know how rich the customer service skills that you have are. You need to outline it. Do you have lots of information listed which is irrelevant? So again, have you spent a couple of years in an organization where the skills are irrelevant to the particular job you're going in? You're taking up valuable real estate on your CV where you can be putting on really good direct or transferable skills. Look at the language and tone from the focus company's website. Is it corporate or casual? So for example, if you're applying to one of the big four accountancy firms where they have specific requirements where they need you to have this particular result in your degree, you need to have this particular experience in the finance sector, that's the tone that your CV should have. Whereas if you're applying to a job where it says, hey guys, we're looking for rock stars. We're looking for somebody who's going to go outside the norm. We want to buy you a coffee. Apply to me. We're going to chat. That's what your cover letter, that's what your CV should reflect. Again, I would always keep your CV slightly formal, but it's okay to change your CV and alter it to the tone of the focus company's website or tone. It really does make a difference. Personal profile. The personal profile is something that you have at the very top of your CV. So after your name, your email address and phone number, you would have a very brief overview of your skills, passion, and target role or industries. So I have seen so many CVs. If I'm reviewing somebody for a customer service job and they say amazing with numbers on their thing or looking to get into a sales role and this isn't a sales role, it's so off-putting and I will immediately move to the next profile. You have to make sure that that's tailored. And then once you tailor it, you don't use that for the next application as well. It needs to be changed every time. So when a decision must be made between two CVs, they'll go with the person who seems most interested. So make sure that you tailor it again. So after your blurb, if you say, right, this person is this, this, and this, and a keen interest in joining the financial services industry, a keen interest in joining the tech industry, or a keen interest in joining the food manufacturing industry, just as a bit of an example, just make sure you tailor it and you make that difference. Transferable skills. These are very, very important. I've put a quote up there. People with highly transferable skills may be specialists in certain areas, but they're also incredible generalists, something businesses that want to grow need. Businesses want people that are malleable, someone that can pick up skills, somebody that can learn quickly, and not somebody who's done the same thing for the last 20 years. They want somebody who's going to be working in a company which is happy with ever moving goalposts. It's so important, and it's somebody that I look for when I'm recruiting, regardless of the company of the role. I think somebody who's got transferable skills, somebody who's malleable, somebody who can pick up new information. I think it's so, so important. So what I've put down here are a few transferable skills. So direct skills, as I mentioned before, coding, Java, TypeScript, accountancy, Big Four qualification, bookmaking, whatever it might be. Transferable skills are skills that you can bring from organization to organization or industry to industry. So you can see some of them are communication, organization skills, listening skills, emotional intelligence, project management, or written communication. These are all skills that will be mentioned on your job description. People will say oral communication needs to be really strong. Stakeholder management needs to be strong. If I'm applying to a tech company where stakeholder management is critically important, and I think that I haven't got stakeholder management skills, where in my previous personal or professional life have I had stakeholder management? Have I run a local football club? Have I organized a university project where I worked with a group of people and I delegated skills? There's always transferable skills that you should be able to bring from your CV to another. I'll go a little bit more over transferable skills in a while, but I wanted to talk about gaps in your CV. This is also extremely important and something which you can easily rectify on your own resume so that you don't have any awkward moments when it does come to an interview. Everything on the CV is up for questioning, and you'd be surprised what somebody will pick up on. Sometimes when I'm doing a LinkedIn search or a recruiter search, I'll need one specific term that I'm looking for. It could be Java, it could be French as a language, whatever it might be. I could A lot of other skills that the company needs might be secondary, and this is the main skill that they need. Far too many times I see somebody that's done Java for 1 year in university, and that was 15 years ago, and they cannot do it whatsoever. You need to have your CV and make sure that your skills reflect what you can do right now. With regards to gaps, if you have a gap, address it on the CV. These conversations can become very awkward in an interview. If you've spent, I think anything over 3 months, you should address it on the CV. So if you haven't worked for a year and there's a big gap in the CV, if you manage to make it to an interview, because I've talked to many hiring managers who are just like, what have they been doing for that year? I'm not interested in meeting them. I would always say, once you leave an organization, have a little line at the bottom saying, this is the reason that I left. The contract ended, took care of a loved one, whatever it might be. Interviewers will always look for reasons that you left a role to join another company or role, so be prepared to explain this. It's one of the first questions I ask. Why did you leave this role? And if there's nothing there or you can't explain, I'm immediately going to assume that it's because of underperforming. You know, so you want to find out why somebody left an organization, take the power back and make sure you mention it on your own resume. Why did you leave the role? So you could say left role to move industries, didn't suit with the hours, went back to study, location didn't work anymore, cared for a loved one. You do not want the interviewer to think that you are either lazy, couldn't get a job for whatever reason, even though that might be the case. If you write at the bottom of your job, I was made redundant for this organization. I took a couple of months where I went traveling with my partner. Then I started to look at the job market, and I've been on the market for the last month and a half where I've done a couple of interviews, but I haven't found the right role. That's immediately explaining a 6, 7, 8 month gap. And I have no issue. And that means that the question won't come up in an interview and take up valuable time where you could be talking about how good you are for this role. Always know contracts and job titles. So recruitment consultant, contract 12 months. It really does help to explain. And again, it takes the question out of it. How to sell, this is just a small little slide, how to sell non-relevant experience. So focus on transferable skills. If you think about a restaurant waiter or an office administrator, every single skill here is completely transferable. Communication skills, customer service, teamwork, working to tight deadlines, working under pressure, managing stakeholders, attention to detail, and problem solving. When I tell people to prepare themselves for an interview, and I'm going to go into interview preparation a little bit more, I always tell them to think about 5 or 6 different stories that they have, stories that they remember in their workplace, something that they can turn into a competency-based example or an example of your past performance, which will dictate future performance. It's really, really important. So transferable skills are basically the most important thing that you can put across in your CV outside of direct skills for that for particular position. Areas to avoid. Always keep the reader in mind. You do not want to have bland, standard info. Your CV is a sales document. I am seeing more and more of Chat GPT CVs, and I think Chat GPT is one of the best things that's ever hit the world. I use it for so many things. When it comes to um, I suppose if I speak to somebody on a phone, for example, I don't type that fast. I'll speak and I'll type and it'll make zero sense to me. I'll pop it into ChatGPT and say, I've just spoken to a great candidate and this is what I typed. Can you make sense of it for me? And it will. It's an incredible bit of technology which I encourage you to use, even if it's spell checking your CV. Pop your resume into ChatGPT and say spell check this and make sure I'm grammatically correct. It actually works better than Microsoft Word. But make sure that you don't use it to create your CV because it becomes very computerized. Make sure you don't have too many technical terms or acronyms. Repetition. So for example, you can see that I've put down ATS, subs, or REC. These are all terms that are used in recruitment quite a lot. ATS is the applicant tracking system, which every company will have to track all of the candidates that come into their system. Internal HR, talent acquisition will know this. Nobody else will. So mentioning ATS a few times in your CV will kind of alienate the reader if they don't know what you're talking about. Subs are submission. So when we would send somebody forward for a company, that's a subs. Rec is a requisition. So again, make sure that you're not using technical terms or acronyms. And on the flip side, if you're reading a job description and you see lots of these technical terms, Again, ChatGPT, pop the job description in and say, please, can you simplify this as much as possible and tell me if I am a match for this role? And something actually my colleague told me yesterday, he was working on a particular area in tech that he wasn't too sure of. And he got a couple of really good, that looked like really good applications. And he popped the application and said, this is an application of this is a CV of a candidate. This is the job description. Is this person a good fit? And it will spit it back out. So don't be afraid to do that yourself. It's completely free to use. Pop your CV against a role and say, can you simplify this for me? Do I have the adequate skills? It's a little tip. Too many pictures can get stuck in some systems, unlike this presentation, which will probably get stuck in every single system because there's a picture on every page. But when it comes to CVs, I would always make sure that you leave you leave pictures, diagrams, graphs, unless you're going for a specific industry where they're looking for marketing or something very technical where you need to explain graphs. I'd leave them out of a resume. One of the main reasons is that sometimes when I'm uploading a CV onto a system or an ATS, an applicant tracking system, it'll refuse it if it's a picture or a JPEG or a PDF. So if you can keep it as simple as possible, make sure that you haven't got too many different boxes or graphs, because if you need to change something on your CV or you need to alter it, you can run into serious time issues if you have to change the complete formatting of your resume. So I'd always say keep it as simple as possible and don't include too many pictures. They will get stuck in some systems. Never leave things out to discuss at interview. Never think I'm going to save this till I get in front of the guys because this is a real rock star piece of information that I have. Make sure that you include it if you think it's going to be important, because getting to that interview is 70% of the battle, and then it's how you perform. Your CV becomes almost irrelevant once you get to the interview because then it's you. Long paragraphs, make sure you have short bullet points. They're the best. Long paragraphs, it honestly won't get read. I've seen lots of CVs where there's incredible content, but somebody has a story form CV. It just doesn't work. Flowery fonts, some people think that they're sticking out. They're sticking out for the wrong reasons. Make sure that you have Calibri or Times New Roman, whatever it might be, but a standard text on your CV is critically important. Make sure when you put hobbies on, I think hobbies on a CV are incredible. I love them. I love seeing it again. It makes somebody a little bit more human. I like to do quizzes. I like to read books. I do a lot of sport, whatever it might be. Make sure that if you're saying traveling, you don't say that I've traveled 7 times in the last 5 years and I've been away for 3 months at a time, because that company is just thinking, how long do we have this person before they're gone again? Again, just little things to note. I also had somebody had down on a CV that they were the quickest pint downer in their friend group. Wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't put you forward as the most professional candidate in the entire world. So I would always encourage you to put hobbies and interests down in your CV, but make sure you're thinking about the reader. Keep the reader in mind. With regards to references in education, you do not have to put references on your CV. And I'd say probably the easiest thing is to not add references. Sometimes a recruiter will look at your CV and see references as a great thing, a great way to business develop. They're calling a company which is essentially losing somebody, and they might ring them and say, I've got your details. Do you want us to help you? Again, that's the worst case scenario. But only add references that you've already checked in with. 2 max. It's completely acceptable to say available on request. So you do not have to include references and details, and it doesn't necessarily make your CV more attractive, but it could invite unintended contact to an employer that you used to work with or do work with. Make sure you include education dates, the school, course, and results. You don't have to go into your exact GPA, but if you can say I got an honours in a bachelor's degree or whatever it might be, make sure that it's included on your CV. You don't need to go into major detail, as I said, unless it's very relevant to the role. Keep your educational certs handy. It's been asked for much more, and especially with some of the organizations that I work with, it's been asked more and more. And remember to add in courses and in-job training where applicable. Irina, would you like to ask a question?
So I propose at the end we will do some
Sure.
Q&A. Don't you mind?
Of course, of course. Yeah, that's
Because I can
absolutely
see a
fine.
lot of questions in the chat and the
Oh, can
Q&A.
you?
So
Okay,
yeah,
I can't see it. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm so sorry.
no worries.
If there is something pressing though, and something that I've missed on a particular topic, please do stop me and I'll be happy to address it. Um, yeah, remember to add in courses and in-job training where applicable. Remember, everything on your CV can be questioned. You can control the narrative. Don't add in that you speak a language just to have to admit that it's a 2 out of 10 in an interview. This is so important. Something happened to me quite recently. I was working with a candidate who was an incredible tech profile, had the exact technology stack, was coming from the Ukraine, was just the most perfect person for this role. And once we started going through the background check, and by the way, education was not required for this role. It was qualified by experience. You needed to have experience in this particular technology, and you needed to have a certain amount of years in this particular technology. This person had it, did an incredible interview, and when it came to the background check, they called me and said, "Tom, I've just got to the education stage, and I've got a degree on my CV that I don't have." And I said, "Well, why did you do that?" And they said that they thought that coming to the Irish market, they needed to put something on their CV which would make them more attractive. The CV was immediately rejected. This person was offered the role and had accepted. You do not want to run into a situation where something's questioned on your CV that you do not have. It's so critically important, and it's an automatic red flag. All of a sudden, integrity comes into it. And you need to make sure that integrity never comes into question or trust never comes into the question. So always make sure to read over your CV. I've also had somebody before who used their friend's template and forgot to remove something that was after a page break. And that was, again, questioned in an interview. That person didn't even realize the information was on the CV. The company did not want to take the risk that that person had tried to pull the wool over their eyes, for want of a better term. Make sure that you know your CV inside out and that everything is okay to talk about. A great idea is to have a master CV that you continuously add to and then cherry pick from when tailoring your CVs for applications. So have a CV which has all of your information and then chop and change it for every application that you make. Really important at the end here, stay positive. Although you might think that you're perfect for a role and you spend time tailoring, it is still a competition in which your details are pitched against others. If you don't succeed, keep going. I cannot stress this enough. I've spoken to so many excellent candidates over the last while that have told me that they've had 10, 15, 20 rejections in a row and they don't understand how they can't get an interview. The market is extremely tough. Don't think that it's you. It's tough for everybody. It's tough for recruiters, ourselves, trying to find candidates. Companies want us to find the very best of the best because there aren't that many jobs open. So just keep trying. Don't think that it's you and don't lose your heart. Just keep going and keep your eye on the market. Okay. Oh yeah, the last thing, spell check. I cannot stress how important it is to spell check and grammar check your CV. I mentioned it a little earlier on. With ChatGPT, with Microsoft Word spell check, there are no excuses. If it comes to somebody we can tell if somebody might have English as a second language and is not saying it exactly as it's meant to be said. That's absolutely acceptable. But if somebody has just not bothered to do a spell check, a standard spell check on their CV, it's noticed straight away, and it's a really big thing for any sort of employer. It is the one document that you have to sell yourself. Make sure that it's grammatically correct, that the spelling is correct. Even send it to a friend to check. But I'd always say, if we see a CV that has got a lot of easy and basic spelling mistakes or grammatical mistakes or even formatting, if you see one word is caps lock and one word is not, it's just something that if you're not putting effort into the one document that you need to get yourself an interview, then that is an issue for us. So make sure that you always spell check your CV. This is my CV. I put it together and I changed a couple of things. I just wanted to put it across to you. It's very zoomed and it looks very clustered, but I just wanted to kind of get it all on this one sheet to show you. But at the top, you can see a little bit of a blurb. I've kept it general for this particular case, but Tom's an experienced recruitment professional, over 10 years in talent acquisition. Tom seeks to join a growing organization and richly contribute to their success going forward. If I was applying to a particular job, I would change that to financial services, tech, and I'd make it a little bit more personal. As you can see, Sigmar Recruitment since March 2015. I have a small little description of the company. I think it's always important, especially in Ireland with the amount of multinational employers we have. It's the Silicon Valley of Europe. All of the big companies in the world are now in Ireland. So when these companies come and they're interviewing you, you need to make sure that they understand that the restaurant that you worked in, that Arnott's department store, that Aer Lingus, wherever you've worked, how good they are as a company. So do have a tiny little blurb about the company that you're working in. It's always important because if you have just the name and that person hasn't heard of that name, you don't want to run the risk of somebody thinking that it's a very small organization and you won't have an impact. Whoops. There you can see I've got my Sigma recruitment for a long time. I've had a number of different positions in Sigma recruitment. You can see the education is there after my other work experience, which is less important. I've bullet pointed that. And then education is at the bottom. You can also have the education at the front, the start or the bottom, depending on how important it is for the particular role that you're applying for. If one of the main requirements is that you have a particular qualification, have it top and center. I would always tell, for example, accountancy candidates that I've dealt with, you need to have your ACCA or your ACA or CPA, which is your accreditation. You need to have that at the very top so that people know that you're suitable. But yeah, you can put it at the front or the back, depending on how important it is. I would always add in additional education and skills in little bullet point form, and then any volunteering, as you can see, interests, and then any honors awards. You can see I've put a couple of achievements in Sigmar as well. So again, it's just something which you can read quickly. I know that I'm a senior IT recruiter now, what I've done before. Again, I'm not saying this is the perfect CV, but it's a clean CV and it's got good continuity. So again, don't try to overcomplicate it. You can have any variation of this, but as long as it shows us what you have done, and it shows variety and continuity, then that's what we're looking for from a resume. Okay, LinkedIn profiles. LinkedIn profiles are very important, and I just want to make sure I'm okay with time. I'm okay with time, am I?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. No worries.
Perfect, perfect. So 15 steps to a better LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is being used more and more and more. I find myself on LinkedIn every single day. I have a professional LinkedIn recruiter license, which means that I can do very advanced searches that you will not see that somebody's viewed your profile if they view it in a LinkedIn recruiter capacity. But what LinkedIn Recruiter does is it brings people who have a more complete profile to the fore. So if you're wondering why you're not being recognized or why nobody's reaching out to you, is it because you don't have a summary? Is it because you don't have many jobs listed? Is it because you don't have a cover photo or a profile picture? You need to make sure that you're recognized, and LinkedIn wants to show themselves in the best possible light. They're not going to show incomplete profiles. They want to show you the best looking profiles on their website, which is why, as a recruiter, when I'm looking for candidates, regardless of how good you might be, if you've got an incomplete profile, you will slide right down the list. So I'd always encourage you to make sure that your profile is as complete as possible. Number one, choose the right profile picture. Again, you do not have to have an overly formal recruit or profile picture. I would make sure that you have just yourself in the photo. So a shoulder shot, smiling. It could be a standard social photo that you took, just somewhere that you look nice, you look approachable, you're smiling, is absolutely fine. But make sure it's clear. Make sure you look approachable. I always find it funny when I see a profile picture and somebody's making an effort to not smile. I just find it looks much more, you look much more endearing if you're smiling or if you look engaging, regardless of the professionalism of the job that you're trying to go for. Add a background photo, so a cover photo. It can be any sort of stock photo, and you can Google LinkedIn cover photos and it will give you hundreds and hundreds of professional looking photos that could have a laptop or a scenery, whatever it might be. It again will contribute to the completion of your profile and the algorithm. Make a headline more than just a job title. So your CV or your LinkedIn profile will have all of your different official job titles, but at the top, you could say Tom Dean, um, sales professional, rock star, whatever you want. Make it interesting. It doesn't have to be just your job title, but it's okay to be. Record and display your name pronunciation. I always say this to people who are coming from anywhere outside of Ireland, but more importantly for people in Ireland, because we have the funniest names of anybody that you're going to speak to. So there's a little option where you can record your name and how you say your name. I don't have to do it because my name is Tom. There's very few people I've met that cannot pronounce Tom. So I don't have to do it. But if I'm calling somebody, and it's happened to me so many times where I'll see a name that I'm not sure how to pronounce, and I'll be in the office with all of my colleagues and I'll say, guys, I've got a name. Can somebody help me? And then I'll get a few different options as to how to pronounce that name. And then eventually I'll just go, hello, Mr. Green, because I won't be confident enough to say what the name is. Make sure that if you think your name might be a little bit difficult to pronounce for somebody who's not from your area or your country or wherever you're from, it's a good little option that LinkedIn has. And turn your summary into a story. Stories are great. Everybody wants to hear stories. Next, Declare a war on buzzwords. Buzzwords are all over LinkedIn. I'd make sure that you kind of stay away from them. Make sure that you keep your summary relevant, and you're not using 101 buzzwords according to your organization. Grow your network. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that you just find interesting. LinkedIn is a professional network. It's not like Facebook or Instagram, but people love to connect. And when somebody writes to me, "Hey Tom, how's it going? I just saw your profile. I'd love to grow my network and connect." I've never said no, ever. It's something that a lot of people will like to connect. Of course, if you're spamming 150 people a day and you're never putting a note with your connection request, LinkedIn might eventually come onto you and say, "Listen, I'm going to restrict your connections at the moment because it doesn't look like you're using this for case." But grow your network. If you find people interesting, if you like the look of their profile, if they're doing something you want to do, don't be afraid to reach out. People love talking in a professional capacity. List your relevant skills. I was a big candidate for this when I started off my LinkedIn profile, where it says, "What skills do you have?" And I started typing, and it let me type everything. I was like speaking, hearing, talking, um, organizing, funny, whatever it might be. All of these skills that you do not need to put on your LinkedIn. So I had about 150 skills, which meant that everything important was diluted. So if you have relevant skills, make sure that you have them listed on the top. So I'd have management, maybe training, recruitment, competency-based interviews, interview preparation, all of these things that are really relevant to the people that I'm going to be speaking to. So make sure you list your relevant skills and scrap the ones that are implied. So good oral communication. Nobody's been hired because their CV says good oral communicator. It just doesn't happen. Or good networker, whatever it might be. Unless you show examples, that skill on its own as a word means nothing. Share endorsements. The best way to get endorsements or get recommendations on your particular profile is to share them. This can be somebody that you've been in a college course with, somebody who was tenacious when it was a joint project that you were doing. This person was a fantastic person to work with. Their communication and tenacity was excellent. I'd recommend them for any project of trust. That just goes a long way, and it will mean that they'll give you one back. It's very rare that you'll give somebody a recommendation and they'll just say, "Oh, thanks." You know, it's really good. It stays on your profile. And I moved into tech about 6, 7 months ago. I've done tech recruitment before, but I've moved in about 6 or 7 months ago, and I found that it was very important to get as many people giving me recommendations that I've placed as possible. So over the last couple of months, the 4 or 5 people that I've placed, I've made sure that they send me recommendations. And it means you send a connection request and you write, "Hey, how's it going? It's been a pleasure working with you," or whatever it might be. "Would you mind popping me a recommendation?" And people are always very nice. You'd be surprised how generous people are. But people check. When people are working with you, if you're being interviewed or whatever it might be, people will look you up. Make no buzz about it. So I love looking at people's recommendations again. I think it really is. It's something which you can't fake if somebody else is writing something about you. So share endorsements and fill in every section of your profile. Last couple of things. Make sure you request recommendations, same as I just mentioned. Showcase your passion for learning. If you don't have a huge amount of education on your CV or your LinkedIn, that's fine. Don't be afraid to sign up to free courses, even if it's basic Excel training or how to run PowerPoints, or if it's a Toastmasters on public speaking, whatever it might be, pop it on your LinkedIn. People love to see it. Showcase your passion for learning. Share media and marketing collateral. There's lots of options on LinkedIn to share content. Um, when you engage with your network, they'll engage back and you'll become more and more visible. Again, I can't stress this enough. The more you're active on LinkedIn, the more it will start bringing opportunities to you. It's like a funnel, and they want everyone who is a real big contributor on LinkedIn, they get them noticed the most. Share relevant content in your LinkedIn feed and add comments to relevant posts. You can like 150 posts. If you make 5 comments, it'll increase your algorithm so much more and you'll get more views in your profile. So I'll just quickly, I think I've got my own LinkedIn page up here. So as you can see, I've got a profile picture, a cover photo, talking a little bit about the recruitment firm that I'm in. I'd like to think of a really complete LinkedIn profile. For the case of this, I put on open to work. That's really important because when I'm searching for somebody on a recruiter license, the first people that I will reach out to are the people that are open to work. And I can actually select a box where it says, "You've got 800 results, but 250 of them are open to work." I know that these are the most likely to come back to me. Also, when I have a recruiter license and I'm looking for somebody, and every recruiter in a big organization will also have this license, if you don't accept or reply or decline that particular email that you get sent, then it acts as 1 credit for that recruiter. So it's within a recruiter's interest to write to people who they think are going to come back to them. So you only have a certain amount of credits. So the first people that I will talk to are people who are open to work. And then you have options to put in what kind of positions do I want to be contacted about? Recruiter, senior recruiter, recruiting team lead, team manager, whatever it might be. So if you're on the job market, pop on open to work and it'll mean that you'll be seen first, obviously with the complete profile. Analytics, this will be who has looked at your profile over the last few days or weeks or months. How are your posts doing? I found quite recently that I was posting too many jobs on my LinkedIn feed. It didn't work very well for me. I'd get 10, 15 impressions. Then I put a poll up on my LinkedIn saying, how often do people change their LinkedIn profile? Is it once a month, once a year, or whenever they're looking for a job? And in the 5 days that I've posted it, I've had 2,000 impressions. So it's posting stuff that's relevant to the network will get so many more impressions than if you're just trying to sell something or if you're just trying to get some sort of traction on your market. Always give back. For your about, you can talk a little. It's a little bit of a blurb. You can go into a story. I talk about my little brief, a little brief summary as to what I've done over the last years, and then you can see the top skills as opposed to communication, active listening, whatever it might be, recruiting, management, sales, training, and stakeholder management. And then you can see the skill sets. So complete LinkedIn page. My education is here. Again, I've got my degree at the top. I'm a National Recruitment Federation, which is smaller, but it shows that I'm an expert in my particular field. I've also got a black belt, which makes me sound really hard, but it's a black belt in social recruiting from Social Talent. I've got a Prince 2 Foundation certificate for project management, and then my leaving certificate. A lot of it's not relevant, but it shows that I can learn, it shows that I can pick up information, and you don't know what the tipping point is going to be for you getting that new role. I also have a number of different volunteering opportunities. Again, shows my human side, and then you can see my skills and recommendations. So Andy gave me a recommendation last month or the month before last. Again, you don't know what nice things people are going to say about you until you ask for those recommendations. So I just popped Andy a message through the system and said, "Would you mind popping me a quick recommendation for the communication that we've had and for the job that we've done together?" So it's really important, and yeah, complete your LinkedIn profile. That's the moral of the story. Next, we're on to interview formats. So this is the last section that we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk to you about what to do before, during, and after your interview. And again, some of this might sound very basic, and you might get nice little nuggets of information, and hopefully I can help everybody out in some way. The common interview formats and what you should be doing in those interviews. First of all, you've got the one-on-one interview, where you're trying to establish a personal connection, focus on your individual experiences, and adapt to the interviewer's style. With a panel interview, you're addressing each panelist, maintaining eye contact, and tailoring your responses to encompass diverse perspectives. Behavioral interviews. These are competency-based interviews. They'll focus on past behavior as an indicator of future performance. And this is what most people might know of as competency-based interviews, or the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result, which I'll go into in a bit more detail in a little while. Basically, you're providing structure to your responses and concrete and relevant examples from your experiences in the past. And lastly, technical interviews. Depending on your field, you might be doing a technical interview which will mainly focus on your skills and your ability to perform in a technical capacity in the job that you're going to be going into. So you can prepare for technical questions relevant to the role and practice problem solving. Who interviews? There are many different interview types. These are probably the most common. One-to-one, which is where you're meeting one person, be it on Teams, Zoom, or across a desk from each other. There's a panel interview where each person on your panel will have different questions for you. There might be a HR person, there might be your direct line manager, and then maybe a manager from a different department who will all have different competency-based questions that they want to ask you. And again, you'll know the type of interview that you're going to be preparing for beforehand, so it's good to know. There's a peer or a stakeholder interview. This is usually when you're going for a lateral move in your organization or a promotion maybe, where you're meeting your boss, where you have to try and have that perfect mix of friendliness and also professionalism because you might know that person very well. But again, it's a slightly different outlook. A team interview is when you've got 3 people sitting across the table from you and they don't necessarily have a structured approach to what questions they're going to ask you. So based on what you're telling them, they'll say, "Tell me a little bit more about that." Or tell me more about that time that you did this. Or how is that skill relevant to this position? So again, that's a bit more dynamic. And lastly, which is probably less common, is a group or a competitive interview. And I know when IKEA came to Ireland originally, I had a couple of friends who did interviews for them, and they were all in a big room, and they were judged on how they spoke out or how they collaborated or how they played these team games. It was a very interesting and group and competitive environment. And then it was almost like an audition. They were told who made the cut and who didn't. So it's very interesting. Before your interview, it's very important. Research the company and the position. I cannot emphasize this enough. I've spoken to hiring managers as early as yesterday who've said that they're meeting so many people who don't know anything about the company. It's really, really, I suppose you're falling at the first hurdle if you've done no research on the company. I would always make sure to research the size of the company, both number of employees and their revenue. It's only a couple of figures, but have them in your head. How long have they been in business? What are their major competitors? Importance of the company mission, values, culture, and recent developments. So where can we find this company information? I think the best way to find information about the company, if they don't have an about section on their page, go to Google Sigmar recruitment, for example, and look at news. They'll see that Sigmar has opened an office in Galway, or they're looking to expand, or they're looking to grow double the size before 2025, whatever it might be. Also, your location, map out the location, and if possible, do a test commute to the location so you don't run into difficulty on the day. But researching the company is critically important. If it comes down to you and one other person who has the same skill set, they will go for the person who has done the research on the company as opposed to somebody who hasn't, because it shows that they want it more. Okay, next we've got understanding the job description. What are the key requirements? How do my skills and my resume match up with the job description? What skills and attributes am I missing? So what skills have I not necessarily outlined on my CV? And do I have transferable skills? And do I understand all of the terminology and abbreviations? Again, ChatGPT. Hey chat, could you please simplify this job description for me, removing all acronyms and letting me know exactly what I need for this job? It's really, really important. Have you recently reviewed your own resume? Do all dates match up? Again, you do not want to be in a background vetting situation where a company has an external background vetting vendor and all they look at is black and white information. They don't care if you've missed a date by 2 months. If it doesn't add up, it doesn't add up, and you will fail a background vetting check, and then you run the risk of not getting the job because of a prolonged process. Make sure that you know the dates, they matched up, and they are on your CV. If you've left a job 3 years ago and it still says March 2015 to present, it just looks a little bit unprofessional. So make sure that you check your CV and do all the dates match up. Is there good continuity? Does it show that you've moved for a reason? Or what are the reasons for moving? Is there anything that you're missing that you'll need to mention during the interview? So if there's a glaring omission from your CV, for example, I had a candidate who was going for a director of architecture role, a software architecture, and they needed Microsoft Azure as a particular skill. This gentleman that I was working with didn't have Microsoft Azure, and even though it was one of the main requirements, he had every single other skill in spades. And he knew Microsoft Azure, and he knew that the skill set that he had was quite comparable. So he made sure that the very first thing that he did, I mentioned it on my submission, and the first thing he did in an interview was he talked about the skill that he was missing and how we could make up for that skill that he's missing. So make sure that you know if you're missing a big skill, how you can make up for it, or how quick you are at learning, or what you've done in the past that's similar. Are there any roles that are a close match to the position you're interviewing for? Practice common interview questions. Every single interview, you're going to get the same type of questions, amongst others. But some of them might be, what do you consider your greatest strength or weakness? I would always recommend when you're asked about your greatest strength or your greatest weakness, if it's a strength, talk about something which you're really passionate about, something which you do very well. If it's a weakness, talk about something I would always recommend that might have been a weakness in the past that you've changed. So as a very basic example, you could say mornings, early rising. I used to be able to get up in the mornings, but then unfortunately my wife got me a dog and now I have no choice but to walk him at 6 a.m., or now I have kids. It's just something simple. You don't want your weakness to be something that is still a weakness. So you could say that I used to be bad at Excel, and then I did a course, and now I'm the guy that people ask about. So if somebody asks about your weakness, talk about something that used to be a weakness. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Ideally, you don't want to say that you want to be in the position that the person is interviewing you that you want to be in, but I would always say a good thing to say is I'd love to be in a position of trust and somebody who is approached when there's an issue in an organization, somebody people can rely on, and obviously progressing as well as I possibly can. How could your current manager describe you? This is always really good because if you are asked this and you're not ready for this question and you don't necessarily have the best relationship with your manager, you could be like, oh, you don't want to be stumbling in an interview. How could your current manager describe you? I've had so many different organizations which have asked that exact question. How would your colleague describe you? How would your best mate describe you? How would your manager describe you? Just make sure that you have something in your mind for that particular question. What motivates you to put your greatest effort in? So this is a kind of an odd question because you'd think that an organization or when you're in an interview, you want to put across that you're always putting your best effort in. But what motivates you to put in your greatest effort is a really good question. So something that you could answer would be if I feel like my work is meaningful, if I feel like I'm helping my team, or if I feel like I'm helping my company reach a goal, that's what puts in my greatest effort. So I love to get full clarity on what exactly my team's goal is or my company's goal. And why do you think you'd be an asset to the company? Why did you leave or are looking to leave your current or last role? What do you consider to be your greatest achievement professionally? What are the most important things you do in your job right now? And how well do you work to deadlines under pressure? These are just common interview questions, which if you haven't prepared or if you haven't asked yourself in your head, you can really stumble across. So keep them in mind. Video interview preparation. Like ourselves before this, you always need to make sure that your tech is working. I had to change room about 3 times before I logged in because the rooms that I'd booked were double booked. So now I'm wearing a headset because I'm in a very echoey little room in, in Sigmar, but hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Test your technology. You do not know your technology is working until it's not. So test your technology. Set the scene, dress to impress, eye contact, focus, and practice. Dress appropriately. As a recruiter, ask your recruiter what company dress code is. There are more and more companies that have a more casual dress code. One of our biggest clients is a global financial services multinational. You'd assume that they'd all dress in suits and ties. It's a very informal process. And I remember when we won the tender, we used to wear suits into the meeting. And the third time of wearing suits, they were like, guys, you really look out of place. Can you start dressing down? So you don't necessarily have to dress formally for an interview, but I would always make yourself look presentable. Ask your recruiter what the company dress code is. If you cannot attain the information, assume that you need to dress formally. That doesn't need to be a tuxedo, as you can see in the picture. You don't even need to wear a tie, but wearing a nice shirt, open collar, or a sports jacket, whatever you think, or for a lady, make sure you wear a blouse or something that's presentable. But again, you're only seeing this in a video interview, so you don't need to dress crazy formally. You can wear shorts underneath, but for an actual interview, do make sure that you dress semi-formally. No one's ever been rejected from a process because they dress too well. It's just simply the case. But I have seen people who have worn hoodies to interviews, and it's just given the interviewer something to think about. And sometimes there might be somebody who looked a little bit more formal, and that's who they've gone for. So make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot. Key points. Do not prepare on the same day as your interview. You'll find out there's a lot more preparation that needs to be done. Always look at it the day before, do your research. Get yourself into the right frame of mind. Some people see interviews as a competitive environment. Are you trying to beat the next person that's going for this job? Or do you see it as something that they're going to make the right choice depending on who's interview? It's really how you approach it. Every interview will be different. So every interview preparation will be different. So make sure that you do new preparation every single time. Of course, when you do one preparation, it's great and you'll have some of the tools, but depending on the organization, do a different bit of preparation. Nerves are okay. One of the most off-putting things that I find in my career is somebody who comes in overly confident or cocky. And I have had people who've come into me, sat across and said, when I'm doing a bit of preparation for sending somebody forward for a role, they said, listen, Tom, I've got the skills. Why are we even here? Why are you sitting in front of me? And I've pulled that person from an interview because I don't want them representing me. So nerves are always okay. It's nearly endearing. If I see somebody's nervous sitting in front of me, I feel like they are more interested in the job because they're afraid of messing up. So nerves are fine. Just make sure they don't get on top of you. And one of the things I put at the end there, don't drink coffee before your interview. I think that's critically important. Everybody has a treat of a coffee before their interview. If you're like me and you speak extremely fast or you let your nerves get on top of you, a coffee will heighten everything by 10% or sorry, 100%. Have a glass of water. Save your coffee as a treat after your interview because if you're nervous, your coffee will make you jittery. It'll make you stumble. It'll make you drop your pencil or whatever it might be. Just don't drink coffee or even tea before your interview. Have a glass of water and thank me later. During your interview, so arrive on time. Know the location well before you make your journey. Make sure that you know exactly where the location is. When you're mapping your route on Google, make sure to edit the leaving time section. I've had so many people who are doing a bit of prep the day before the interview. They check the route and they say, right, 25 minutes, that's perfect. When they leave their house at 8:50 the morning next morning and the commute is now an hour and 20 minutes, that's when you run into a problem. So on Google, there's a setting where you can say, what time would you like to leave at? Make sure to pop that in if you're trying to commute at that particular time. It'll give you a more accurate reflection of what the traffic is going to be like or what the public transport is going to be like. Don't arrive too early. I've had people that have arrived a half an hour before a meeting that I meant to have, and all of a sudden my receptionist says, Tom, your candidate Lydia is here to meet you downstairs. And I'm like, oh, because then you have to drop everything. You have to try and speed up the work that you're doing. You don't want to leave the person for a half an hour downstairs. It might put you in a bad mood. 10 minutes is fine, 15 minutes at a stretch, but don't be afraid to arrive 10 minutes. If you arrive 30 minutes beforehand, make sure you find the door and then go for a little walk. But try not to arrive too early. Number 4 there, knowing where you need to be. Some companies have multiple sites and buildings. You could spend 15 minutes finding the correct door. I put that in because it happened to me only about 3 weeks ago. I went for a training in LinkedIn in their headquarters just on the canal in Dublin. And I was about 10 minutes early because I had to drop my kids to school or to nursery. And when I arrived, I was like, yes, 10 minutes. I was on time. And the building that I went to was under construction. And I couldn't just walk next door. I had to go all the way out, back onto the canal, and around the long way. And I ended up being about 5 minutes late. And it was a prime example of knowing exactly where you need to be and getting yourself there on time because it could be the wrong door or Google could have brought you to the wrong place. So give yourself enough time. Get there 20 minutes beforehand, but don't go in, if you know what I mean. But I always find that very important. Being late is just one of the biggest no-nos in an interview. Of course, if you've got an absolute excuse where it's unavoidable, that's fine. But if it's carelessness, it mightn't be digested as well. Be polite and friendly to everyone you meet before, during, and after your interview. Again, I have another example of this. When I went for my interview with Sigmar Recruitment, I walked into reception and I was meeting one of the directors of the company, who's still a director. And her name is, I said, I went to the reception and I said, hey, my name is Tom Dean. I'm here to meet Malwina. And the receptionist was like, okay, no problem. And I sat down and then I struck up a conversation and we ended up having a good conversation. And after 5 minutes, she said, by the way, she's Polish. Her name is Malwina and she hates when people call her Malwina. And I was like, yes, thank you so much. I don't know if she would have told me if I didn't have that conversation with her that I was saying the name incorrectly or I was pronouncing the name incorrectly. So be friendly to everyone you meet before, during, and after your interview. You don't know if the person who's working as the concierge is best friends with the CEO. It's everyone is important, so make sure that you're friendly and approachable and not just saving all of your charm for the person that you're meeting. Really important. First impressions, it goes without saying. Eye contact, firm handshake if appropriate, good body language, and smile. Don't be afraid to smile. Smiling really just, I suppose, initiates a smile with the person that you're meeting. So even if it's not something that's necessarily funny, when you're smiling and talking, it encourages people to smile back to you. So don't be afraid. Even practice with your partner or a friend. Do an interview and then just smile every so often, or try to insert a small bit of banter. It's always nice, especially in this market. General questions again, CV review. Pretty much questions that you're going to be asked every single time. Tell me a little bit about yourself. This is an interesting one. I would always make sure that I used to tell people have a 5 to 6 minute pitch at the start to talk about your experience. Briefly go over what you're doing now, why you want this job, and a snapshot of your most recent experience. But then for that director of architecture role that I was telling you about, the hiring manager wanted a 40-second elevator pitch when it came to tell me about yourself. And I found that out because I had somebody who didn't do an elevator pitch but I was able to tell the next candidate. If anybody went on for 3 or 4 minutes, the manager would immediately in their brain say no. You never know what you're going to need. So have an elevator pitch prepared, but also have a 5 to 6 minute brief run through of your experience. You can add a little bit of personal and a little bit of professional. My name is Tom. I'm married. I have 2 kids, and I've worked for Sigmar for the last 6 years. We recently moved on to this project, and now I'm looking to move for this reason. Something small. Details about previous experience, gaps, timelines, and motivations, always going to be asked. Give us a run through of your CV. Why do you want to work in this job, and what do you know about this company? They're always going to be asked. So I make sure that you always have these questions prepared. Competency-based questions, the STAR method. I've spoken about this before. Pretty much in most interviews that you have, you'll be asked competency-based questions, even if they don't necessarily tell you that they're going to be competency-based questions. A competency-based questions is the STAR method. So you'll be asked to answer with situation, task, action, and result. So you describe the background or context. What was the task assigned to you or the problem you faced? Explain what you did and how you did it and why you did it, and describe how it ended, the positive outcome. I wouldn't get too hung up on the STAR method. I think that if you have a good story, a start, a middle, and a positive end, then you will hit all of those points. But essentially, people are looking to see what your past performance is as an indicator of future performance. So practicing competency-based questions are really important. I've just added a couple of competency-based questions that I just found that I think are quite good. Customer focus. Describe a situation where you changed a customer's experience from a negative to a positive. Teamwork. Describe a time where you had to work as a team to solve a problem or complete a task. That could be university, it could be in an organization, it could be a football team, whatever it might be. Describe a time where your manager made a decision that you disagreed with. That's integrity. So did you stand up to the manager, or did you give them advice, or what was the situation? That question could be seen as, does this person argue? Are they argumentative? Or are they happy enough with their integrity to stand up to somebody who's making a bad decision? The last question here I love. I think it's one of the best questions. I worked with an organization and they used to ask everybody this particular resilience question. What skill or ability do you feel that your current or previous employer or teacher or lecturer undervalued most in you? So there's so many different facets to that question. So it's a skill or ability that you've had that you haven't been able to bring forward in a previous organization. So why didn't you bring it forward? Why weren't you able to bring this forward in your organization? Why did your manager not let you bring forward this ability? What did you do about it? Did you have the conversation? So it shows that you've got resilience, that you had these skills, that you weren't allowed to portray them or exercise them. So a really good question there. If you look online for competency-based questions, there are hundreds and hundreds of them. So think about the organization that you're interviewing for and what types of questions they'd be asking. Also go on to Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a website which does reviews and interview questions. If you're going for an interview in an organization, it's more than likely that lots of people have written their experience on Glassdoor, and they might even have a few interview questions up. So to give you a feel of what the kind of questions are going to be. Nextly, common problems I see with competency-based answers: not enough material to critique. If you know that you're going to be in a competency-based interview or not, I'd always think about 5 or 6 stories that have happened to you in your organization. No actions, rushing right to the end, no story, using personal opinions as evidence, unable to finish the story or example, no natural end, and rambling and talking too much with too little substance. Key points, and I know we're kind of close on time now. Be honest, be professional and actively engage. Stay focused and confident throughout the interview. Even if it's somebody, I always say to somebody, if somebody's in an interview and they find that the job doesn't seem like a right fit for them, or they're not engaging with the person who's interviewing them, still put your best foot forward, because that mightn't be the person you're working with. Put your best foot forward and then you can make the decision afterwards. Being nervous is not an issue, and ask questions. And the last couple of slides, very quickly. Examples of questions that you can ask at the end of your interview. Use the Google News tab. What has happened to that organization in the last little while? What opportunities does the company provide for professional growth to its employees? What is the culture like in company and teams? What are the company's goals in the next few years? And what is the most difficult thing that you face in this department currently? Lastly, after your interview, reflect on your interview. Was there anything that you missed or you'd like to mention? I had a gentleman who got a job there recently, and he was asked to do a coding exercise in the second half of his interview. He didn't finish the coding exercise on time, which is fine, but he retrospectively finished it after the interview finished, and he decided to message me and message the interviewers, and the interviewers loved it. They loved the fact that he had the tenacity to go back and finish the coding exercise, and they offered him the next day. So think about, was there anything you've missed or would like to mention? Maintain professionalism. Is your social media private or up to date? It will be looked at. I look at people's social media pages all the time to get an idea of who that person is. So either privatize it or audit it. Um, Thank your interviewers always, thank them for their time, and tell them that you're interested in the position. Even if you're not sure if you are, make sure that you're in the conversation so you can make your decision later. Emphasize that you're interested always. And then, is it appropriate? Send a LinkedIn connection request. It may or it may not. You can make that decision. Final words, salary. You may be asked about salary and remuneration during the interview, so make sure that you have put some thought into this. So if they say, so what are your thoughts on package? You can say, well, listen, I was currently on, or I was on previously, or this is what I'm looking for going forward, or I'd be happy with the market rate, whatever it might be. But don't ask questions about salary or benefits during the interview. It's very, very off-putting. I always encourage hiring managers not to ask the question either, and you will rarely get asked about it unless you're meeting a CEO or someone who owns an organization. And then lastly, I always like to say to people, what's the worst that can happen? I'm really sorry I went on for a little bit longer there, guys, but that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. There's so big list of the information for every person who are in the employment path. Thank you so much. Really, you cover completely everything, I suppose.